joining me on this episode of the Total Fight Mike. Today I have a special guest with me, Coach Douglas Keast. Coach Keast is actually going to be joining me on the cage side for the next events for Total Fight Mike at Cicero Stadium in Cicero, Illinois. So please check your listings and buy your tickets. Doug, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So we've actually gotten to talk a little bit, but they don't know who you are. So why don't you talk about your history with martial arts? Where did it all start for Douglas Keast?
I'd have to say my first foray into the martial arts was through books. There wasn't anybody that, it's not that there weren't people around. My parents didn't want me to study the martial arts. They were afraid that I was going to learn to fight. You know, I was just going to fight. So,
Parents never want you to learn martial arts.
as I was going to school, there were probably a half dozen books: boxing, judo, Japanese jiu-jitsu, in the library of my grade school. And my name at one point was probably in there 10 times. So I would, check out the book and keep it for as long as they let me, and then check out a different one and just cycle through them. So I was always interested in it. And then, of course, Samurai Sundays, I watched that. It wasn't until I went away to college. I went down to Illinois State, and I was...
What year was this, if you don't mind me asking?
That would have been like 93. I'm sorry, 91. It was 91. So I went down there in 91, and I was living away from home. Nobody could tell me what to do, to my discredit, but I went down there and I joined the Aikido club, and I got to spend about 6 or 7 months doing Aikido. I really enjoyed it, and then turns out college wasn't for me, so I ended up moving back home.
Okay.
While I was there, while I was doing the Aikido, there was a guy in the dorm that had done some Muay Thai. So he said, "Hey, come and, my instructor is here in town. Why don't you come with me?" And I went for a month.
Okay.
Maybe 2 months. Dave Rogers, he's a really good Thai instructor. He's, some people say he's one of the best American Thai instructors.
Okay.
And I trained Dave Rogers. Okay. I trained with him for about a month, maybe 2. And then I moved back home.
Okay.
When I moved home, there was nothing like that. Okay. We had traditional karate, and it just wasn't. I was okay with that if I had just stayed with the Aikido, but as soon as I tried the Thai, and he was doing a little bit of JKD at the time.
Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, some of the stick work from the Filipino arts.
Okay.
He's since then, or now, he's doing strictly Thai, assuming he's even teaching anymore.
Right.
But the last I heard, he was doing strictly Thai.
Okay.
And so I came back, and there was nothing but traditional arts. And then Joe Gutierrez started teaching a class out of the Gold's Gym.
Okay.
And I don't know, he was there for a year. And then he couldn't do it down there anymore. So he moved back to Chicago. He wasn't living there. He's traveling down there because he had family down there.
Okay.
And when he came back, I said, "Hey, where you at? I'm not going to quit."
Mm-hmm.
And he was up on Central. Actually, I think when I first came up here, he was on 59th and Karlov. It's not far from here. Okay. Just the other side of the airport. 63rd, 111th, 79th.
Okay.
I don't know. He moved a lot of times, but every time he moved, I knew where he was going. That's where I was going. And I got my instructorship in JKD through Joe in 95. I had my first fight in 94. Fought 13 times.
Okay.
From 94, I fought 12 times from 94 to 2001, and then my 13th fight was in 2011.
Okay.
At the ripe old age of almost 41. And it didn't work out in my favor record-wise, but it was more or less just to say, hey, look, I can still, do this and be competitive.
For someone who's actually gotten the courage to step in there and fight, it's not a detriment to look at your record, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Because if you actually put in the work and the time and you actually stepped in there, who's to tell you that you couldn't do it? Because you had already done it. You already performed.
Right.
For better or worse, you performed. It's there.
One of the first events I was at, I think I was cornering somebody. And I was at this event, and the promoter, and I, for the life of me, can't remember who it was, but he said, when you go out there, win or lose, people are going to discredit what you've done, saying, oh, I can do better, or you're a wimp and you suck. He says, if you walk out of this locker room and you set foot in that ring, because it was a ring at the time, not a cage. He says, if you set foot in that ring and you actually start the fight, you are already better than everybody in that crowd because you did it. They're watching it.
Exactly. So
there is some respect to be given to somebody who sets foot, in the cage, in the ring. I mean, I think it is a big thing to be able to do it. It changes you personally. It changes your aspect, your insight on life, because when somebody's beating your face in, it doesn't really matter that you've got a bill that's late. I forgot to. Seems like a big deal, but when you get hit in the face, your priorities change, and you go, oh, I need to be right here, right now. That doesn't matter. So
interesting. So when you talked about getting your JKD instructorship, what was the psychological transition from I want to be a fighter to I could actually help kids or young adults and I could actually be a coach?
I don't think there was ever a transition.
Okay.
I think it was always kind of part and parcel.
Okay.
Growing up, I always felt that I needed to help people.
Okay.
Whether it was, my mom needs help carrying the groceries in, well, that was kind of my job.
Yeah.
Or somebody wasn't getting a math concept in school and I knew it, I would help them. That was kind of what I did. So once I got my instructorship, I realized that now I have another avenue to get in and touch people's lives for the better. I've had a lot of students. Some of them went on to become really good martial artists. Some of them didn't. But that wasn't necessarily the only metric that I looked at. I wanted them to become good people.
There you go.
And when I work construction, so I curse. I work construction. That's just
one of the questions I was going to ask you what your job was, and if anything, how does martial arts correlate to your actual job and your lifestyle? So you're kind of going into it. Please keep on going.
But so in my normal day-to-day life, I curse. When I'm at the gym, I don't.
Okay.
Simply because I feel like I need to present myself in a way that's beneficial, to be a beneficial role model for my students, whether they're, 10 or 40.
Right.
A 40-year-old, or I'm 50. It doesn't mean that I don't have role models. It doesn't mean that I can't learn at this point. If I see a behavior that doesn't work well for me, then, I can change that because I'm still alive. As long as I'm alive, I can make changes.
Right.
So
as far as you used to have your own gym, called Genesis Mixed Martial Arts Academy. You want to talk about that a little bit? And
Yeah.
actually, how did it get started, first of all?
Well, in 2007, I had a friend of mine who owns a traditional martial arts academy. It's a Tang Sudo Academy, TriStar Martial Arts.
Okay.
He messaged me and he said, hey, I'd like to sit down with you and see what you think about something. And I was like, well, sure, I don't know what you're talking about, but let's sit down.
Okay.
And he said, this whole MMA thing is it's starting to pick up. And he said, I'd really like to get involved in it.
This was 2007, you said?
2007.
So this was literally when it was starting to blow
Yes.
up. Okay.
Yes. So he spoke with myself and another gentleman who, Donnell Sykes, who was an instructor in Muay Thai.
Okay.
He told me, he says, I'd like to do a program where my students or the parents of my students or whomever can come in and learn some different techniques.
Okay.
When we first did it, we weren't sure that anybody was going to want to fight. We just figured it was going to be a class.
Okay.
And probably a year after that, we had one of the students there said, well, I'm doing all this, I want to fight.
Okay.
Okay. So he had one fight, he ended up winning,
Good.
won by knockout and never fought again. He was just like, well, okay. I'm
One and done.
Yep.
Okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
But then we started picking up more students who wanted to fight, and we ended up having, half dozen fighters out of that gym before I opened my own gym.
Okay.
It was kind of a funny story. I was looking at, of course, I was all over the internet, and I saw martial arts like management software.
Okay.
I asked for some information.
Okay.
So I put in the phone number so that they'd send me the information. And the phone number that I used was the gym's phone number.
Okay.
Well, the owner of the gym got a phone call from this company, and he thought that I was looking to go out on my own, and so he confronted me about it, and I said, look, that wasn't the intention. The intention was just to get information on a software that I thought maybe would make us more efficient. Mm-hmm. And we ended up deciding that I should go my own way.
Okay.
And so my wife and I started looking at gym locations, and we found a location in October. This was, I think, when we decided that I was going to go a different way. That was the beginning of October. By the end of October, we had found a new location.
Wow. That's a really fast turnaround.
Well, we found 3 or 4 that were potential places.
Okay.
But this one, we walked into it, we went, yeah, okay, I can see where things are going to go.
Okay.
So by the end of October, I think the middle of November, we had a lease, or it was a rental agreement. It was a month to month. So.
Okay.
But by the middle of November, we had a place, and by February 1st of 2016, we opened. So we had, I had to make the bathrooms larger. We had to redo the front because it was an old battery store, battery warehouse store.
Okay.
And
Real rundown. You needed a lot.
yeah, it's even when I left after all the work I did, it was still pretty run down.
Okay.
We decided that we wanted someplace that was nice, but not sterile. So what we wanted was, when you walked in the front, you went, oh, this is a nice place. Mm-hmm. And when you walked in the back, you got that feel like in Rocky. Real work is being done here. Mm-hmm. Not.
This is a gym.
Yeah, It's not an art gallery. It's a gym.
Even though there's art being
Yes,
done.
yes, but it wasn't the sterile, like operating room type feel. But we wanted it to be a little bit edgy so that you knew that real work was getting done.
Okay. What was special about your school? Because let's talk, when you research other schools, there's, this school's a wrestling school, this school's a striking school, this school's mainly jiu-jitsu school, this school's a well-rounded school. Like, how would you have described your school or your teaching style, rather?
First off, I can just go through and say, we did boxing and Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu and professional wrestling, and we had fitness classes. At one point we had yoga. So we had all the different things. In my opinion, the strength of the school was the fact that we took everybody. I didn't care if you were brand new or had 20 years doing it. It didn't matter. You were as welcome either way. I had people with some learning disabilities. I had people with physical disabilities. I had people that were, so perfectly healthy, but they could do all the stuff physically.
Right. Physical athletes.
It didn't matter. It didn't matter. And it was nice because, like I said, people tend to model themselves off of their mentor, their role model. And because I was like that, the majority of my guys were very accommodating to all new students. Of course, sometimes you get a student come in that
wants to beat everybody up.
Yeah, he wants to. He's got some sort of a lack in one part of his life, and he thinks he's going to come in and like push that off on somebody else and say, "Now it's your problem." And they'd come in and they'd spar hard, or they'd be mean, and to the credit of the gym, we had a handful of guys in there that wouldn't take that, just wouldn't play.
Mm-hmm.
So, we always said if you're a jerk and you come into the gym, you're either not going to be a jerk over time, or you're going to continue to be a jerk, in which case you're going to get run out. Mm-hmm. So, we didn't have jerks in there because they either learned not to be or they left. Just.
You're going back to that, trying to be a better person.
Yes.
I remember you showing me footage of the gym, and on the wall it said, "Better than you were yesterday," or "Better
stronger than yesterday."
Okay.
Yeah, stronger than yesterday. That was. I had people come in and they would be like, "Oh, I want to be a world champion," and I'm like, "Well, how do you get there?" Mm-hmm. And they're like, "Well, I got to do this and this and this." I'm like, "No. You just got to do one thing. You just got to be a little bit better today than you were yesterday. Mm-hmm. And the next day you need to be a little bit better." Because what's the old joke? It says, "How do you eat an elephant?" One bite at a time, right? Elephant is the largest land animal on the earth, but the only way you can eat it is one bite at a time. It's a little bit at a time. And if you look at it from that standpoint, you may have great day. I learned a little bit. Mm-hmm. But in the context of stronger than yesterday, are you better today after that marginal day than you were yesterday? Well, yeah. Okay. That's a win.
Yeah.
So
how is it that you're able to remotivate one of your guys, let's say, who suffered a loss? Because when it comes back to it, that's a rough feeling.
It is.
Especially when everyone's been watching you. When you have corners screaming at each other, screaming you for directions, and then that maybe there's a sense of discouragement, a sense of failure. How do you get past the barrier? How do you get past those negative barriers in order to pick your fighter back up?
Well, the first thing is you have to own it. You have to go, hey, okay, you lost. It happens. Khabib is the only one that I know of that's retired without a loss. Mayweather,
Yeah.
Who else?
Joe Calzaghe was a boxer from Wales who was able to retire undefeated. Andre Ward. Let's see who else. I mean, we'll say what you want about John Jones.
So let's just look at this. How many boxers and mixed martial artists, combat sports athletes are there in the world? In history. In history. Let's just say 1 million, and you named off 4. So there have only been 4, and I'm picking a number, just 4.
Right.
There have been 4 undefeated combat sports athletes in history. Are you that good?
Right.
I mean, now you may want to be that good, but you lost, and it's okay. That happens. It does. It happens. It happens in everything, whether it be combat sports or at work. I'm running conduit doing electrical work, and I realize, oh, you know what? I didn't look far enough ahead. There's something in my way. I got to pull all that out and redo it. That's a loss. I mean, so the first thing is you have to own it. You have to realize that, hey, losses happen. 2 people go in there, and barring anything unforeseen, you're going to have 1 winner and 1 loser.
Right.
It's not really a 50% chance,
Right.
but there are only 2 options.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to win or lose, because I think draws are ridiculous, but that's a whole
Can I
different.
ask why? Okay, talk about that a little bit.
The
Draws are
reason I
ridiculous.
think draws are ridiculous is because I have never watched a fight where I couldn't say that guy won.
Okay.
Maybe not by much, but I've never said these guys are 100% perfectly matched. Nobody won.
You get the real bad decisions too sometimes where the guy's all bloodied up.
Oh, yeah.
And the other guy with the clean face gets the loss.
Yep.
And they're holding up the other guy's arm, and it's like, well,
Yep.
well, what happened?
Yeah, I just think, especially when you look at it from the now. Let me go back and say boxing is a little different because you have 12 rounds. So one guy could win 6, and one guy could win 6. The other, the next 6.
Yeah.
And now you have a draw. That kind of makes sense to me.
Hey, when I to your point, when I watch boxing fights, I end up scoring most of them draws. I watch them a couple times, and then without the audio on to kind of leave the distractions.
Mm-hmm.
When you actually look at the physicalities of the fight, it's like, oh, it's kind of even because of exactly what you just said. One fighter took one piece of the fight, another fighter took the other piece of the fight.
Well, and if you look at boxing, you'll have a 10-9 or a 10-8, occasionally a 10-7. So that usually is that tends to be the difference in a fight. In MMA, it's 10-9. I mean, how many 10-8 rounds have you seen? I mean, there have been 5,000-10,000 fights. How many 10-8 rounds have you seen?
To your point, there was Frankie Edgar when he fought Gray Maynard the 2nd or 3rd time.
Yeah,
He was getting his
Yep.
He was getting his face pummeled in the first round, and after the fight, after one of the press conferences, Dana White had stipulated if that was a 10-8, then 10-7s don't exist.
Right. Oh yeah. Oh, absolutely. And from an MMA standpoint, because they're at max 5 rounds, if you have a guy who wins rounds 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, and 3 by the slimmest of margins, but enough that you could say he won, and then a guy goes out and just the other guy destroys him for the last 2 rounds, he loses the fight.
Right.
Because they don't give 10-8s. They do, but they don't. You know what I mean? It's if you see those 10-8s or even 10-7s.
Yeah, and which are very few.
Which those are even more rare.
Yeah.
I've seen more unicorns than I've seen 10-7s. But if the scoring was a bit more varied, you know, it's really, you're looking at 10-9, 10-10, 9-10. Those are the three scores that you see 95% of the time. And to the discredit of one of the fighters, that's probably not as accurate as, you know, if you give a 10-10 round, you weren't watching the fight. You were checking your phone and looking up when something was exciting and then looking back down.
Okay. What about kickboxing or Muay Thai, specifically Muay Thai style kickboxing? Because you see those guys stay in the pocket for a large margin of the fight, trading leg kicks.
It takes a bit more focused eye. You got to have
because there's much more going on.
Yeah, you have to have a bit more of a refined palate for it, because what looks like it hurts doesn't necessarily, and what doesn't look like it hurt
is an immense pain.
Yeah. So it's kind of like taking professional boxing and amateur boxing and really putting them together, because amateur boxing, doesn't matter how hard you hit them. If you hit your opponent one time and it's a crushing blow, but he stands up and then he peppers you with 35 shots, his 35 shots beat yours.
Right.
Even though they just touched you, they're scoring blows.
Last time Coach Hyman was here, he talked about that. I actually asked him about that quite a few times. And we have the Sugar Ray Leonard right over here, one of the greatest amateur boxers ever. Coach Hyman was talking about the difference in styles between amateur and professional, how some guys couldn't make it in amateur, but they can make it in the pros, and some guys that can't shake it in the pros, but were amazing amateurs. Mm-hmm. Is that kind of what you're getting at here? Because when you look at both styles, amateurs much more point fighting. Knockouts do happen.
Yes, but that's not the point. Is scoring blows. That's the be all end all in amateur boxing. What I've found is, if you learn the technique, if you learn the body mechanics necessary, all you have to do is touch your opponent. Okay, a lot of times you'll see people who say, "Oh, I'm just trying to hit him really hard." Stop trying to hit him hard. Touch him with mechanics, because that's where the power comes from. It's the mechanics. It's not the effort. Nobody that hits hard tries to hit hard.
Right.
They just throw a good punch.
Okay.
So make your contact,
right,
and the power will be there, assuming your distance.
Put it to you in these terms. For that, let's go back to the second Frankie Edgar-Gray Maynard fight.
Okay.
For the title. After the second or third round, so Gray Maynard was training with Extreme Couture in Las Vegas. Randy was in his corner when he was allowed to be in UFC grounds. Right. Now they're not so cool anymore.
Yeah.
Gray Maynard had rocked Frankie Edgar, and then when the second round came, Frankie Edgar utilized proper angles, utilized wrestling, started to utilize much more movement. He got his legs underneath him. Mm-hmm. When Gray Maynard went back to the second to his stool to get ready for the third round after the second round was done, Randy Couture looked at him and said, "You're trying to knock his ass out. Just beat him up."
Yep.
Just beat him up. I mean, now that fight was scored a draw because that was a great fight, but it was, it was to your point, just touch your opponent.
Yeah, just put your hands on him. You don't have to go all out. Just do what you do. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing that you've done in the gym for 12 weeks before the fight.
Right.
Just go do it. Don't force it.
You have you had a fighter who was a Golden Gloves boxer. I can't remember his name.
He fought in the Golden Gloves once. His name was Thomas Jasinski.
I commentated for one of his bouts. He's got phenomenal leg kicks for a boxer.
He's
Phenomenal leg kicks for a boxer.
Here's the thing: he fought Golden Gloves. He's not a boxer. He's
Really?
he's a jiu-jitsu guy.
Really?
He's
got great hands.
Had one boxing fight.
I seen that fight.
He's had one boxing fight.
And he didn't do too bad. The guy was a little bit bigger than him.
Well, and the
technically
guy had
he
more
was-
experience.
Okay. He still looked good.
He had one boxing fight. I think he had a kickboxing match, and he did a dozen grappling tournaments.
Really?
Yeah.
I would suspect that he was a striker.
No,
by the
he
way.
was. He's a grappler. He's a mixed martial artist. Don't get me wrong.
Of
But
course.
he preferred to be on the ground.
I could not tell
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
the way he
it
was.
was no that. And let's see, that fight, he won that fight, right?
His opponent's corner threw him in the towel.
That,
actually.
yeah, he won that fight, and then he went on to lose the second fight because he tried to fight that second fight the same as he fought the first.
Ah, okay.
And-
was it a rematch with the same opponent?
No,
Okay,
no,
okay.
it was in Minnesota.
Ah, okay.
And he
okay,
fought
okay.
a guy.
Not TFC.
He had. This was Thomas' second fight,
Okay.
and I think the guy he fought had 5 fights.
Okay.
So this guy had some experience.
A little bit more experience. Okay.
And he was a little bit bigger. And Thomas was trying to strike with them. And
Okay.
I told him, I said, hey, why don't you go where you're happy instead of, you can show everybody you're tough. Yay, that works. But it's not going to win you the fight. What wins you the fight is being in your wheelhouse and keeping him out of his.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be comfortable. You don't want him to be comfortable.
With all due respect, that gentleman was a wild man because whenever he would get hit, I'd see this big smile just show up on his
Thomas,
face. I'm like,
yeah.
oh man, he's one of those guys, huh? Okay.
Yeah, he was. I don't even know if he's training right now.
Okay.
I know he was moving around. He had moved to Florida and then to California and back to Florida.
Okay.
Maybe Colorado. I haven't talked to him in a few weeks.
Okay.
I know he's been moving around.
When you have a fighter that is very, not reluctant to listen to what you have to say, but let's just call it what it is, doesn't want to listen to your advice, how do you get past that? How do you get past that? 'Cause it's very difficult to talk to somebody that doesn't want to listen to you,
Well,
let alone give someone instruction that doesn't want to follow.
you have to give them the instruction. Your job is to give them correct instruction. If they don't listen, that's on them.
Yeah.
Now,
It is.
does it get frustrating?
Right.
Yeah, it gets frustrating. But I have to do my job. My job is to make sure that they have the skills that are necessary to be successful. Not necessarily win, but to be successful. I have to make sure they're in good shape. I have to wrap their hands. I have to warm them up. I have to give them, good instruction. Their job, they have 3 jobs as an amateur. They have to train hard, they have to make weight, and they have to fight. That fight is probably the least stressful. Not for a first timer, maybe not for a second timer, but once you've fought a few times, that fight is the least stressful part. As a matter of fact, it's almost a relief because, you were beating yourself up for 12 weeks or however long it was.
Okay.
And now you're like, you know what? I can see the end. As an amateur, it's 9 minutes away.
Right.
It's
It's kind of interesting that you say that because Keith Patterson kickboxed for TFC. I had him cage side commentating with me before the show actually started. Sorry, Keith. He told me that he was more nervous for being on the booth than he was for the actual fight.
I had several fighters that would go into the cage or into the ring, and they were just cool as a cucumber. And of course, I'm looking cool, but inside, nothing but doubts and did I do enough? And I prepared them. Do I have this? I would tell them, it's worse for me than it is for you, because
Do they believe you?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
That's on them.
it's really on them because all I can tell them is what I know.
Right.
And it's kind of like having kids. I don't know if you have kids.
I got a dog.
Oh,
I'm
wow.
a child.
So you give them everything that you can to make them successful. But at the end of the day, you have to step back and let them do it themselves. And sometimes they're going to get hurt. And sometimes they're not. But every time it eats you up inside because you know that you can't help them, whether you physically can't because they're in the cage and you're not, or because if you step in and help them, it's going to hurt their progress. So it's very much like that.
When you have a fighter that is good at one specific, let's say that someone came to you at your gym and they already had been training for a certain amount of time in a specific discipline, can be applicable to MMA or the cage or whatever. As a coach, how do you what do you concentrate on? Not how do you concentrate, but what exactly do you concentrate on? Do you concentrate on their strengths? Do you concentrate on what they need work on? What exactly how do you mold them to be that better person the next day?
The short answer is yes. Okay. So if I have somebody that we're just going to say a good boxer, I want them to be the best boxer they can be.
Okay.
Now, I know that if they're on their back, they can't be a good boxer.
Right.
So I have to work some takedown defense. Takedown defenses are not 100%. So I need to be able to teach them some groundwork, all while still improving their boxing. Because if that's their strength, and I don't improve that, and they become a passable wrestler and a passable submission artist, they're just average.
Passable a little bit.
Yes. So it's, if you've got a good boxer, you want to make his boxing better while trying to prop up his secondary attributes, his secondary skills.
Okay.
I don't think that fighters, I don't think that fighters can be successful with the I just want to be good at everything attitude. You have to pick something, because that's going to be, you may start out with no knowledge and do jiu-jitsu and wrestling and Thai and boxing, but you're going to gravitate towards one, at which point you want to grab onto that, hold on to it, and not let it go, because that's where your body and mind and everything just kind of, that's where it feels comfortable.
Alrighty.
Now, that being said, we don't want to neglect the punches or the kicks or the takedowns or whatever. You know, you want to pick the one that you're good at, or that you feel comes naturally. Make that as good as you can, and then build up the other stuff to a passable level.
Alrighty. So we're at Gutierrez Martial Arts Academy, GMA. There are 5 to 7 fighters fighting on Total Fight Challenge. As a coach, how do you manage all of them at once? Because it's a lot of bodies, everyone's got their own schedules, not everyone wants to train as hard or as long as the next guy, or maybe they do.
Well,
how do you find that
it's
balance?
it's really important that you have a team.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what you do. It doesn't matter whether it's the martial arts or politics or construction or your family, or nobody does anything by themselves. You can't get anything.
That's a good point.
There's an old thing that they say, oh, well, you just pick yourself up by your bootstraps.
Mm-hmm.
Can you do that? I don't have boots, but I've got sandals.
Okay.
I can put sandals on, or you can put my sandals on, and you can grab the sides of those sandals and pick yourself up off the ground. Not gonna happen.
No.
So that saying, everybody tends to use that saying as, oh, well, that's how you get ahead. You just will yourself to do it.
It's put in the work.
Yeah. It started, that phrase started as a, like, mocking the idea that everybody does it by themselves. The only way that you can you can get picked up by your bootstraps is if you have two people help you. Mm-hmm. Well, it's the same thing when you have a gym. You got 5 fighters. We had 6 on one card. For a small gym was
huge turnout.
Yeah, it was pretty good. But the only way that you're going to be successful is you have people that are all pulling in the same direction. You're a team. You know, I had traditional karate guys, I had boxers, I had jiu-jitsu guys, I had wrestlers, and it is their responsibility to help their teammates. If they see something, say something.
For better or worse.
Yeah, and it's, if you look at everybody as attached with like bungee cords, okay, elastic bands, if one person gets good, everybody else is attached to them. So they're going to rise up to them. And chances are that that bungee cord is going to push them past. And now you've got this
stagnation of momentum.
Yeah, you got the momentum. They run past them and they get better.
Okay.
Okay, so now you're better than me. So I'm going to be helping you because I'm going to say, hey, this really resonated with me. Help me understand this concept. Oh, I get that. And then now I gets to go because he was already this much better. And then does that make sense? I mean,
oh yeah, absolutely.
Stuttering and.
No, that's okay. Don't worry about that.
But does it make sense?
Yeah, it makes perfect sense.
The best person in the room should lift up everybody else.
Exactly.
Nobody drags anybody down. That's not how it works if you're putting the work in.
Okay. Unfortunately, the past couple of years, due to the pandemic and COVID-19, the coronavirus, there are many local businesses that took a hit. Do you want to talk about Genesis MMA? And
yeah.
how unfortunately you had to shut the doors on it. Did it have to do with
yes,
the pandemic?
It did. My wife and I were concerned that when the pandemic hit, we were going to have to close because the governor had stated that all gyms and I don't even remember all the non-essential businesses were going to close for a month or whatever. And we were pretty much funding the gym out of our own pocket. So if we would bring in enough money to cover it, great. But most times there was a shortfall, and we did it because I enjoyed it. It was, it was essentially a hobby.
Okay.
Because the business makes you money, right? So it wasn't always making me money.
But you still wanted to help.
Yeah, and I don't regret a second of it.
Okay.
At all.
I'm sure none of your fighters regret,
What I regret is the fact that we had to stop.
Yeah.
Talked with my landlord, and we weren't going to be able to get any kind of help with the rent. And we looked at our finances and we said, you know what, we just can't do it. So we ended up closing the doors, and I was depressed for a good 6 months, 8 months. It was difficult because I went from seeing my group of fighters every day, almost every day, 5 days a week.
And doing well too. I've commentated for a couple of them too.
And
great guys.
I mean, just from the social aspect, I was seeing them every day. Mm-hmm. And then these people who have been, some of them have been with me for a decade.
Yeah.
And then I didn't see them. I just, I didn't want to be reminded of the failure of the gym, even though it wasn't necessarily my failure. It still, it still was painful. I try to keep in touch with some of the guys. it's difficult. And thankfully, it wasn't my only income. It was, like I said, it was a hobby. There are companies, there are businesses that closed, and that was their own. That was it. That was their income. Well, that's even worse. I was emotionally depressed. It didn't take away my income. I was still working because I was an essential worker. It didn't. It actually is better for my marriage because now I get to see my wife. While the gym was open, she used to tell me all the time how the kids were growing up and how big they were getting, and I never saw them. I would get off work at 3:30, and I would have a 4:30 class, and then I would be there till 10 o'clock at night, and then I would go home and I'd go to bed and get up at 4 o'clock so I could be at work at 6. And
that's a grind.
Oh,
That's a grind. It sounds like fun, but when you actually start, I'm sure it was fun and stressful at the same time.
Pretty much for 4 years. We were open for 4 years.
Okay.
So February of 2016 to, I guess it was 5 years because it was 4 years because it was March of 2021 or 2020.
Let me ask you something. How can students or people who are attending a gym or a dojo kind of make sure that the doors stay open? How was there a way that you could have contributed? What advice would you give?
The students, not so much. They're doing, if they show up, they train and they pay their bill, that's all you can ask. The problem that I had was if I had $1 for every time somebody said, well, I can't afford that, we'd still be open because I'd be a millionaire.
Yeah.
But what drives me nuts is when somebody says, well, I can't afford that. I'm like, really? Because I was on your Facebook and I saw how you were out at the club, and every picture, you had a different drink in your hand at $5 a pop. You probably spent $100 that night. Well, our gym, we were $69 to start. So one night, take one night off, you could go in and train for the whole week or for the whole month. One night a week. And people would say that all the time. I would hear, oh, I can't. Don't tell me you can't afford it. Tell me you don't want to, because that changes the whole narrative. If you don't want to, I'm not going to try to, I'm not going to try to convince you because it's obviously not your thing.
Well, with that being said, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Total Fight Mike. Thank you for teaching class today, by the way.
No worries.
You actually got to teach class, and it was amazing. Learned a lot. Thank you guys so much for joining us on this episode of Total Fight Mike. You will see him next time next to me for Total Fight Challenge. I will see you guys that night, and hopefully I'll see you guys in the sequel. Bye, everybody.